Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Jay's Fit Down Podcast. We're back after the NFL draft here with another episode to kind of recap. I'm joined by Rusty Byrd, the Kirk and Byrd Show. Glad to have him on to talk the draft with us. So thank you, Rusty, for coming on. Yeah. And now we're going to, like I said, recap, which was an interesting draft this year. And now it's already in the books, and we are heading towards the season. So, but first, please make sure you guys check out the channel. Check out Rusty's channel as well on YouTube. Kirk and Byrd Show also on all podcast platforms. And make sure you also, guys, grab yourself a copy of my book, A Good Man in the Evil World. I'm an author. So please make sure you guys grab a copy of this book. It's on Amazon, ebook or printed version. Great read. So please get yourself a copy there. Now.
Yep. I would suggest, definitely get the book. I have and read it already.
Yes. So please do that. But yeah, Rusty. So 2023 draft is in the books. Great turnout in Kansas City. And now comes the interesting part, which every sports website or analyst they love to talk about. Which teams won the draft this year?
So we always we always go who won the draft,
right?
And I guess you can base it on what people were predicting or how people kind of graded out. But I like to kind of hold off and see in a couple of years, and the reason I say that is because I don't think we really talk too much later. I mean, about the really bad draft selections. So I'll give you an example. Like, I was hot day one when my Chicago Bears drafted Mitch Trubisky, and then like Daniel Jones was drafted, and I'm like, those GMs really kind of screwed some stuff up, or moved. Like, I mean, the Bears moved up to get Trubisky. Now, so it's just things like that But based on what we know right now, I thought, I think most people, I felt the Texans improved themselves because they were able to get a quarterback and a defensive player, but I also thought they needed a lot more help. So some of the moves they made to get the picks they made, like they making trades to move up, I didn't think that was worth it. I personally felt like the Eagles won. I'm trying not to be like what I hear everybody else saying, but I feel like the Eagles won. And I thought the draft, I won't say they lost, but I just didn't get the perspective of the Detroit Lions selections. Their first pick was the running back from Alabama.
Yeah, Gibbs. Yeah.
And I didn't think they needed a running back, but I also didn't think, this theory now that you don't really need to take my theory, I don't have to go by right on. I don't think you need to take a running back in the first round because it's just about being young and fast. Now, some people will say if they are special, like a Saquon Barkley, and then they're saying the from Bijan.
Yeah, Bijan.
Bijan is special.
Yeah.
But I still think like it's got to be in the right system. You got to make sure they get the right amount of touches. And so I thought that Detroit selecting an Alabama running back, and we'll talk about this for quarterback. I just don't think, how can you really judge an Alabama quarterback or running back based on the great lines that they produce and the receivers that the quarterbacks are throwing to? So I'll just say that. But to answer your question, Philly won today because they kept getting so many defensive players from Georgia, and then I thought I did not like what Detroit did. And I say that because Detroit, I thought, was going to be on the verge of, because like I can't say a bad team that just like the Skins, like they're not good and what we'll just see with them. But I'm saying I thought Detroit had potential in that, especially in that division, to kind of take over. But I don't know if these moves helped them. They really needed help on defense last year.
Yeah, tremendous help. And they went out and they got some secondary players in free agency, getting Gardner Johnson, and then they, got Manuel Mosley from San Francisco. So they brought him over there. So but like you said, yeah, there were. I think at 12 you could have went some other ways instead of Gibbs. Now they did trade Swift to the aforementioned Eagles. But hey, we'll see. Like I said, it's hard to say who won and who did because like we don't. We have to, like you said, we might have to wait a couple of years to see how these guys, see them play on the field and see them mature and process throughout their careers, and see how they actually turn out. But just from the surface level, I mean, I don't know. Like I said, I think definitely the Eagles, you could say, won this. I agree with you. I think they had a great draft. Howie Roseman is like a wizard. But
who would you say lost it? I mean, who do you think had the? Can't say lost because they could each team, but who do you think overall didn't, based on what you feel, had the best selections in the rounds they took people? Because I just feel like some positions and some players were just not picked at the right part of the draft. That's me.
No, that's completely understandable. I mean, like I said, I think you can definitely put the Lions up there. Some of just the decision making, like I didn't quite get all of them, and it was you could have went other spots. I mean, so that's another thing, particularly for me. I definitely believe in that. I would just say the Lions. I mean, a couple other teams too, but the one that popped out to me was Detroit. Yeah.
Okay. So let me ask you this then, and I know this is your show and you ask a question, but let me ask you, who do you think then had the best combination of draft and free agent acquisitions to this point? And for example, the Jets, right before this draft, signed Aaron Rodgers.
Right.
The Ravens, right before the draft was completed, signed Lamar Jackson. So when you think, okay, now the Ravens don't have to worry about a quarterback for the next 5 years. Maybe the Jets don't have to worry about quarterback for the next 2 years. Plus what they did in the draft or who they lost. Is there anything that sticks out to you?
Yeah. Baltimore, like you said, I mean, you get Lamar, you finally get him locked up for 5 years, as you mentioned, and now, and their draft was, it was solid. I liked Zay Flowers at 22. I really did. He was one of my favorite receivers coming out in this draft. I like his burst, his speed, his route running. I mean, he's a fantastic prospect, and I think he will really shine in this Ravens offense, especially with Todd Monken running the show. He was at Georgia, so he loves those speedy, dynamic receivers, and hopefully, they get him involved. And I know Lamar will love to have him there, and Odell too. So. They're hoping Bateman can show up. I think the Ravens. I would say they had a solid. I mean, for agency wise, it was okay, but they had a good draft. I would say Baltimore. I really like what they're doing. I think they're going to be well.
Yeah, I feel you on that, and I just. I want to see. So let me say this. I think Baltimore did well in selecting and then in retaining Lamar Jackson, but I also feel like the AFC has so many good quarterbacks. And normally we kind of like, okay, who are the better teams? Well, let's see who are the better quarterbacks. But the AFC just has so many strong quarterbacks. Like the top quarterbacks. Top 10, okay, I'll say that out of the top 15 quarterbacks, probably 13 or 14 are in the AFC. I'm just coming off the top of my head, but if you think about, within the AFC, so you've got, and if we just went down by even just divisions, the AFC East, Tua, if he's healthy, is okay. Josh Allen, now Aaron Rodgers, and What is it? So the Jets?
Mac Jones.
Okay, Mac Jones, right? So three of the four.
Three of the four. Yeah.
Three of the four. Okay, three of the four, and okay. So then if we went, what would be okay? Let's go to the AFC North. All right, you got Joe Burrow, you got Lamar Jackson.
That's about it.
Well, based on pay, I agree. That's it. But they do have Deshaun Watson in Cleveland, okay? And then Kenny Pickett, we still don't know. But again, three of the four
yeah,
are supposed to be really good. Like I said, the highest paid guaranteed contract sits in Cleveland. All right, now I don't think he's got it anymore. And so then I'm not very impressed with the South. I'll say that. I still think Trevor Lawrence is way overrated, but he would be probably one of the better NFC quarterbacks if he was over there. We don't know what Tennessee's going to. Tennessee and Houston are going to have rookies. I'm sorry, Tennessee, Indianapolis, and Houston. We don't know about. Those three. But I did want to ask you, what did you think about Tennessee's selection at quarterback?
So I was just going to mention. You read my mind, man. I hate, Malik Willis last year. They took last year as their quarterback. They thought he was going to be the parent to Tannehill, and when he played, it wasn't pretty. However, the Titans, the production just as a whole offensively just was very lackluster during that time, and it just wasn't that good. Now, Vrabel came out and claimed that Tannehill was the starter, going to camp and everything, and that then number 2 will be Willis, and then 3 Will Levis, who they chose in the draft, and didn't go until the second round. So congrats to Will on finally getting picked there. But Will Levis, I don't know, man. I just don't. I really don't. I have nothing. I can't. I have no answer for that. I just don't know.
What I just don't understand when it comes to the way they did this quarterback thing is, what if you're Ryan Tannehill? What are you thinking? You drafted maybe who was supposed to replace me last year, and then you went with Will Levis this year. But the one thing I would say is, so Malik Willis was hyped up as being a potential first-round pick last year, right, but he didn't go into the third round. Mm-hmm. Okay, he was an 86th pick overall, and Will Levis is not. If you think about draft capital, like they still got him in the second round, so they're not having to pay as much. So why not maybe take a flyer on both guys who some people said were first-round draft potential, could have been drafted in the first round at some point in their last years of college, even going through combines and stuff. So to get a Malik Willis in the third round, if it doesn't work out, if Will Levis, it was the top of the second, but still, it's not like you're drafting, these guys not just in the first, but high first, So that, I would say that, but it was surprising having selected Malik Willis, and I'm going, well, they see him in practice. Maybe they don't have the same, right. Maybe they know something we clearly don't know.
Yeah. It just is, now I really am not a fan of Ryan Tannehill being the starter for the Titans next year. However, they're just at the point where that might just be their best choice.
Right.
Poor Tennessee fans. But now moving on, Rusty. Moving on to Bryce Young, the first overall pick, who many thought originally was going to be the second overall pick. And, lately that kind of just flipped around, and Carolina started, loving him more than C.J. Stroud. Mm-hmm. And C.J. Stroud then go to, number 2 to Texas. So Bryce Young, can he be the guy for Carolina? Can he lead them to the promised land?
I hate to be negative, Nelly, but I just you never know with the rookie how it's going to turn out. So I'll give you an example. Trevor Lawrence in his first year, he was supposed to be like transcend the game but I was never truly impressed with Trevor Lawrence because I thought in college he had a tremendous program he was playing in. They had great receivers, and I'd always thought the key to Clemson during his time there was Travis Etienne. And so I feel the same way with the Alabama quarterback, whereas look at the receivers that he's thrown to over the past 2-3 years. Like, they're great. They've been great receivers, and it's that offensive line, but they've also had running backs taken in the first round like every year. And so I find it hard to say, oh yeah, this guy, he's the overall number one pick. He's going to be fine. I don't, and we don't know, how that whole Carolina thing is going to come together. Frank Reich, he didn't really have the success in Indy, and people thought he would or should because he was supposed to be a quarterback guru. Like he helped the Eagles as an assistant win the Super Bowl with the backup quarterback. And Frank Reich was a great backup quarterback himself, but he couldn't get it done with any of the quarterbacks that ran through Indianapolis. I just and I don't know how the owner with the Carolina Panthers doesn't appear to be a very patient person. And so but they had the Baylor coach. What was he there? Maybe 2-3 years, 2.5 years.
Yeah, about 2 years.
Matt Rule.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah,
because he got fired before the year ended. So, are they going to be? Is he going to be patient with Frank Reich and Bryce Young? And it's hard for me to gauge Alabama quarterbacks, just like Ohio State quarterbacks, because there's so much talent around them. So I'm wishing him well, but I just don't see him. No, to answer your question, no, I don't see him taking the promised land. But then, how do you define promised land? Because I would change your question. Do you see Bryce Young taking them to the Super Bowl? And if that's the question, I'd say no. But if your promised land is the playoffs, maybe. Maybe.
Yeah, that's valid. Yeah, that's fair. Bryce, I mean, as phenomenal player as he is, of course, everybody kept that one thing everybody was knocking on his size. We all heard that the whole process, the whole draft process, the whole combine, all that stuff about him. So we'll see how that goes. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see. Carolina, we'll see what happens with them.
I will say the NFC South is pretty weak, so it's not impossible or that they would not make the playoffs because
made it last year.
Yeah, almost made it last year, but the coach that really helped them the most, they didn't retain. So what was it? Steve
Wilkes, yeah.
Steve Wilkes,
yep. Mm-hmm.
And then Frank Reich, he was let go by the Colts. So I don't know. I don't have a lot of faith in Carolina knowing what they're doing, and I don't know if Bryce Young is the one.
Yeah, well, that will remain to be seen.
Mm-hmm.
So, but yeah, like I said, now who would you say were your draft shockers this draft? Like some picks that maybe you like. Like I know you mentioned Gibbs was at Detroit, at number 12. Any others that really made you like kind of scratch your head? Like, I don't know about that.
Yeah. So right. I thought the reach for Gibbs was really weird because I thought they really needed defense. Okay, and I just didn't think that he was going to make much of a difference in Detroit. I think I would say probably my biggest shock, and I guess I would base this not just on the overall draft, but just on some of the selections. The thing that got me was probably the fact that some of these athletes that were selected, and so Darnell Wright was one going to the Bears. There was also it might have been Anthony Richardson. Let me just say Anthony Richardson. And my point I'm getting ready to make is there were some players that were picked in the first round, but if you looked at their experience, it was like they only started 12 games in their college career, And so I believe that I know that was the case for Anthony Richardson. He's clearly being selected based on his potential. Okay. Great athlete, but I'm like, he didn't get a lot of opportunity over the 2 years at Florida. But I was just surprised because who were some of the other ones when you looked up and they were like, well, he only started a couple of games and he's just based it on his potential. So there were a few of those out there. I think Anthony Richardson was a shock to have moved up as so high. And then the other, of course, is Will Levis dropping to the second round. But if you really watched him play, you could see where he wasn't necessarily going to be there. I think the other thing that got me was when I looked at Iowa having two linebackers in the first round. Iowa has traditionally had a good defense, but I didn't remember those players, and I saw them play live year before last at Maryland. I thought that was kind of a shocker to me, to have Iowa have 2 first-round picks, in the top 20.
Yeah, that's understandable. Yeah, Jack Campbell was one of those guys, linebacker from Iowa. Yeah, so we'll see. I think another one was was it Van Ness? Lucas Van Ness, was that him? One of them. He was the pass rusher that was taken by Detroit, I believe. So but it's interesting, man. I'll say for me, it was Seattle at they had the 5th pick, taking Devin Witherspoon.
Okay.
Devin Witherspoon is a phenomenal prospect. He's a great player, and I think it's a great pickup for them. Had Tariq Woolen on one side and him on the other. I think that's going to be a great secondary. But I just thought corner that I didn't think they'd go corner that early. That shocked me. I thought they would probably get Carter or maybe Anthony Richardson, but they went with the corner, so that kind of shocked me a little bit.
Yeah, I think one of the things I heard people that really were shocking is that the way Buffalo was able to get the tight end. What was it? I can't.
From Utah,
yeah. Because Dalton Kincaid.
Yeah.
Because I had heard Dallas really, really wanted him, and so I think Dallas thought we're good. He's going to be after this, and then Buffalo moved up, and they kind of stole who I heard was Dallas's preferred pick, because Dallas has some legendary tight ends over the years, and they're just the guys that were always getting open for the last 20 years. And I think this is one of the ones they projected could have been the next one for their program. I'll tell you, if there's a sleeper, and clearly most people in the first round aren't sleepers, but I would say Dante Banks. Going to the Giants out of Maryland, like that kid's legit. I've seen him play the last 3 years, and dude can really play. And so, if I think the value in defensive backs, if they can really play, is it's worth it if they're good. Because like last year, with the Jets picking up Sauce, like he made an impact, and it was worth it to do that. So if Dante Beck, I think he's going if you have a strong cornerback game in a weak quarterback conference or division, then you can do so many things. And again, when we started, talking about the AFC having great quarterbacks, when I looked at who are the great quarterbacks in the NFC, it was hard. I mean, outside of Jalen Hurts, you kind of struggle. Kyler Murray, we don't know what he's going to be with the new coach and in his attitude and his studying film and everything. I like Justin Fields, but he has a long way to go. I think they have him run too much, and I don't think he has any real receivers. We don't know what Green Bay is going to have at quarterback. I guess you could look at Kirk Cousins as a veteran, a senior guy, but again, I'm pulling for Dak. Dak has the money as a top quarterback, but he hasn't really gotten it done. So who is the number two? Who are the top quarterbacks in the NFC compared to, the AFC? I mean, Tampa doesn't have Tom Brady. New Orleans is still looking. We know that the 49ers have Trey Lance, but is he going to ever really play and be the man? I don't know. I just that NFC and the quarterback situation, I say it's not that great, but what that means is that the value of that cornerback goes up because they're going to keep those average quarterbacks average, and they and it gives them an opportunity to make big plays.
Yeah. You looking at NFC, it's Jalen Hurts, and after that, it's like,
right.
So
you might even say that Seattle's. So Geno Smith
solid. He
was a backup. Solid. That's my point. Somebody could say Geno Smith was top 4 quarterback in the NFC last year. I mean, he played well enough to be recognized. I mean, he had been a backup for years. He was a starter at the Jets because they drafted him, in the first round. But that's my point. Like, somebody could argue Geno Smith is as good or better than Dak in terms of last season. So I don't know. The NFC's got a lot of work to do at the quarterback position. But that being said, I think it means it's a clearer path for the Jalen Hurts to maybe return to the Super Bowl.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, so this was a very great cornerback class. I love that. Guys like I said, Devin Witherspoon, Christian Gonzalez, Deontay Banks, lots of these guys. It was a really great class for the corner. So that's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. But Rusty, like I said, that should wrap us up there for today's podcast. But it was fun, recapping the draft, and it's in the books. Now we're heading to mini camp pretty soon, and soon the season will be here. So any last thoughts before we sign off?
No, I just think, it's funny because I was in a group chat with my cousins and some friends, and we are always talking football, and they were like, "Oh, this is this," and I can't get up for the draft. Now, let me just say this. So yes, this is a last thought. I thought the fact that the 3 of the top 4 picks were African American quarterbacks says a lot for us to be in a place like this. Now, you're a young guy, but I grew up where if there was a black quarterback just getting to play or starting, like Randall Cunningham, like that was a big deal. And we saw over the years quarterbacks not getting that opportunity, or when they were, like a Michael Vick might have been drafted number 1 overall, he wasn't in the right system. Imagine Michael Vick in the spread, like he was under center. And so, but my point is, I thought the fact that African American quarterbacks got an opportunity, they're getting this opportunity, I think is great. But I also feel like we get so excited about the draft, and then 2-3 years later, we're like, Baker Mayfield was a number one. Trevor Lawrence was a number one. I just like we it's hard, to say we did like we got so excited for these guys, but then they didn't necessarily do what they were supposed to. I think, Joe Burrow was an exception, being a number one. But so that was it. My biggest takeaway is just it's hard because I don't really know what we're going to get. I feel good when I see defensive players and some defensive backs. But those quarterbacks and receivers are the key component now, and you just never know. And let me just say this. It's not necessarily because that guy isn't a good quarterback. So much has to do with where you're selected, the team, the philosophy, the blocking, the receivers. Jalen Hurts, to me, is a good quarterback. But the management staff, they're putting those quality receivers around him. I think Joe Burrow's good, but he's also got great receivers, So again, I'll do the old thing that my friends say when we coach is, if you put Joe Burrow in the Redskins and you take UNC the quarterback they selected out of UNC 2 years ago and put him in Cincinnati with those receivers, do we have a different? Does Joe Burrow make the Commanders better? So that's kind of thing. So much we as not being on the inside don't know. But that would be my last takeaway. And I'm sorry for rambling, but that's still my thoughts.
Got a valid point. I agree. We won't know until we know, until we see that product on the field. So that time before we know, I'm waiting to see. I'm excited, and see. Well, maybe I'm excited now. Maybe I won't be when that time comes around. We'll see. But Rusty, thank you for coming on the show today, man, and talking some football with us once again.
Yeah. Thank you for having me. It's always fun, man. I appreciate it. And I'm not trying to be Debbie Downer. I just go, let's do this. I don't have to be the person on the show. Let's go back, because these contracts go like 4 or 5. I want you to take maybe let's go back like 3, 4, 5 years, and let's review those top picks. I think that's a show that we could say, oh, okay, let's look at who were the picks, the top first round picks of a few teams, and let's see, do they still have the same coaches, the same system? How did they do? Right. I think that's something that I think would be interesting. All right.
Yeah, it would be. So keep that in the back of my mind. Rusty, thank you for coming on, man. I appreciate it.
Oh, yeah. Thank you.
Of course, man. See you later.
Okay.